One of my favorite anime ever is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, so I decided to go back and play every single game based on Yu Yu Hakusho. Yu Yu Hakusho was created by Yoshihiro Togashi and began as a manga in Weekly Shonen Jump in 1990. The anime, however, started in October of 92 and quickly became immensely popular, even rivaling Dragon Ball Z. Okay, so it's just Dragon Ball Z with ghosts and shit, right? No. Just look at these characters. You have the abnormally strong main character that finds out he's not exactly human, the sidekick slash rival who eventually becomes relevant, and the spiky black-haired villain who turns good and becomes the main character's new rival. Actually, it's a lot like Dragon Ball Z. But honestly, aren't most shonen anime pretty similar? Anyway, the series hit its peak around 93-94. They were releasing a new game almost every month from August 93 until the end of 94. So, we started our journey with the simply titled Yu Yu Hakusho for Game Boy. This is a fighting game that starts with the Genkai tournament and ends with the Saint Beast. I don't know how they expected to make a fighting game with only 2 buttons, and it works exactly as you'd expect. Not very well. You get 3 chances to use special attacks like the Spirit Gun, but the best way to beat your opponent is to just cheese it. Your health and special bars don't replenish after fights, but there are bonus minigames strewn across the map that let you refill them. You can grab items by punching around the stage, but I have no idea what they do. So fighting games make sense as Yu Yu Hakusho is a fighting anime. But they took things in a very different direction for this next PC Engine game, Yu Yu Hakusho Yami Shobu Ankoku Bujutsu Kai. From what I can tell, it takes place during the Dark Tournament, but doesn't really follow the story very closely. You shoot at a few of the characters, building up to full power Toguro. But you also battle the other members of Team Urameshi. It's essentially Duck Hunt if the ducks fired back at you. Next we have another 2-button fighting game, this time for the Famicom, called Yu Yu Hakusho Bakuto Ankoku Bujutsu Kai. This is one of the very few games developed for the Detach accessory, which was like the Game Boy Advance's e-reader. To pick a character, you actually have to scan their card. That's a lot of effort just to play a crappy fighting game. Maybe I'm being too hard on it. After playing the Game Boy game, this one doesn't seem that bad. I take it back. Next is the sequel to the Game Boy game, Yu Yu Hakusho Daini Dan Ankoku Bujutsu Kai. They really need to find shorter names for these. This one continues where the first one left off with the Dark Tournament. It follows the story pretty closely, starting with the match against Team Rokuyu Kai's Rinku, and ending with the battle against Toguro. This game plays much better than the first one. Everything is smoother and it just feels better. You can also ring out, but I don't see that happening very often. We're back to basic names with Yu Yu Hakusho for the Super Famicom, but this game is anything but basic. It's not so much a fighting game as it is an odd strategy game. You hold a direction and press a button to do things like attack and block, while taking into account available energy and your opponent's moves. Like most of the other games released around this time, this one takes place during the Dark Tournament. It actually follows the story pretty closely, and it includes most of the characters that fight against Team Urameshi. I actually really enjoy this game for the visuals. Instead of the typical 2D side view, you get a close-up of each character as you choose your attack, and watch as it plays out. A lot of these moves are taken straight from the anime, so it's interesting to see how they translate to the game. The next game is Yu Yu Hakusho Gaiden for the Sega Genesis. It's an RPG, kinda. To move around, you choose these options, but since they're in Japanese, I ended up going in circles a lot. Using my extensive knowledge of the series, and because the intro basically shows you, I can safely assume that this takes place after Toguro invites Yusuke to the Dark Tournament, but before it actually starts. It looks like you're hunting demons that have taken over people, but again, I'm not 100% sure on that. This isn't a typical turn-based RPG, and it's not really an action RPG either. You just kind of move around and attack things. It's a bit like the PC Engine game actually, but with less movement and more punching. The end credits are pretty interesting as they show off some of the events of the Dark Tournament. So far we've played fighting games, a shooting game, a kind of RPG, and a weird fighting strategy type game. This last one's pretty simple. It's a beat 'em up for the Game Gear called Yu Yu Hakusho Horoboshi Mono no Gakushu. Like the other one for the Genesis, this game doesn't follow the original story. Instead, you play as one of the 4 main characters fighting your way through various generic enemies to reach a boss where the mechanics completely change into what you could call a minigame that's half punch out and half timing your button press. One weird thing about this game is that you can actually take health from one character and add it to another, but once you play as that character, you can't choose them again for a while. So that was part 1 of Crash Plays Yu Yu Hakusho. We looked at 7 games and there's still a bunch more to go. The official anniversary is in October, so that would be a good time to wrap it up. Fun fact, Yoshihiro Togashi is married to another famous artist, whose most popular work is celebrating its 25th anniversary as well. Maybe I'll look at some of those games in the meantime. If you want to see more anime games or if you want me to move on to something else, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Google+, and we will see you next time.